All right, so you want to talk about creepy houses, huh? You want to talk about places where the bad vibes are practically baked into the foundation? Well, this deep dive is for you. We're going to be looking at excerpts from Whispers from the Hollow. And it's not your average ghost story.
Oh, no. This one asks, is the house itself evil or is it something darker? Something maybe more human, echoing through time.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, and that's what makes this case so interesting, right? Right from the start, the source emphasizes a sense of dread that seems tied to the land itself, even before we meet any people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those whispers present even before the house was built, they suggest something ancient and unsettling, almost like a warning carved into the landscape itself.
Yeah, it's one thing to have a spooky old house, right? But a location that's been whispering unsettling things for centuries before anyone even thought to build there, that's a whole other level of creepy.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then the Perron family arrives, completely oblivious to what they're walking into.
And that's that classic setup, isn't it? The unsuspecting family drawn to the charm of this old house, seeking a peaceful life. It makes the contrast when things start to go wrong all the more unsettling. But what's interesting here is that the source suggests their arrival might have actually stirred up something dormant, awakened a malevolent force that had been lying in wait.
So it's not just that the house is haunted, it's that the Perrons' presence might have actually triggered something.
Yeah, it's like they unwittingly opened a door or something.
Okay, that's seriously creepy. Tell me more about this awakening. What happened?
Well, the source describes a gradual escalation of events. At first, it's those whispers, those disembodied voices. The townspeople always reported, but now they're inside the house, growing louder, more insistent. Then objects start moving, doors opening and closing on their own. Like something is testing the boundaries, probing the Perron family's defenses, their sanity.
And this is where Carolyn Perron starts to sense that something's seriously wrong, right? She's the first one to really feel the weight of this presence, the malevolence behind those whispers.
Exactly. The source describes her growing unease, the feeling of being watched, the sudden drops in temperature, the feeling of a cold hand on her neck. These aren't just unexplained noises. This is targeted personal. And it's designed to instill fear. It's textbook haunting behavior, aimed at isolating and weakening the victim.
It's like whatever's in that house is playing mind games with Carolyn, trying to break her down psychologically before making any bolder moves. And of course, at first, her husband Roger doesn't believe her. This isn't exactly a new development in haunted house stories, right?
Right. There's often that element of disbelief, that clash between the rational and the unexplainable. But what's fascinating here is that the source suggests Roger's skepticism might have actually fueled the entity's power. There's a line that really struck me. Disbelief is a fertile ground for darkness to take root.
Wow. Okay, so not only do the Perrons talk into this already creepy situation, but their own reactions, their own doubts and fears might be making things worse.
Yeah, their fear is like nourishment, for this thing.
That's unsettling, to say the least.
It's a disturbing concept, isn't it? This idea that our own psychological states can impact the manifestation of supernatural phenomena. It challenges our sense of control, our understanding of what's real and what's imagined. And in this case, it seems to have given the entity in the house the opening it needed to escalate its attacks.
So we've got this house that's practically oozing negative energy, right? Whispers that predate the structure itself, and a family whose doubts and fears might be feeding this malevolent force.
Right.
What really gets me is how these events seem to spiral out of control. It goes from whispers and cold touches to something far more aggressive.
Yeah, that escalation is the hallmark of this type of haunting. It's not just random events. There's a clear pattern, a progression of intensity. It really suggests there's an intelligence behind it. The source describes physical attacks on the family, objects being hurled across rooms, and even the house itself shaking violently.
It's like whatever is in that house is making a statement, going from subtle manipulation to an all-out assault.
Exactly. Like it's upping the ante,
Yeah, and this is where the Perrons finally decide they need help, right?
They do.
This is where Ed and Lorraine Warren come in.
Yes, and their arrival is significant, not just because they're renowned paranormal investigators, but because the source describes their immediate reaction upon entering the house. Even the Warrens, who had investigated countless hauntings, were taken aback by the oppressive atmosphere, the palpable sense of evil that seemed to permeate the very walls.
So we're not talking about your average ghost hunters here.
Oh, no.
These are seasoned professionals, and even they were creeped out from the get-go.
Right.
I'm guessing that's not something they encountered very often.
No, not at all, and that speaks to the intensity of this particular case. The source notes that Lorraine Warren, who was known for her psychic sensitivity, was overwhelmed by feelings of dread and despair the moment she stepped inside. It's almost as if the house itself was trying to repel them to warn them away.
And that makes me wonder, does the source say anything about why this house in particular is so intensely haunted? Is there something about its history that explains this level of concentrated evil?
There is. This is where the story of Bathsheba Sherman comes in. Now, tales of witchcraft and hauntings are often intertwined, but in this case, the link seems particularly strong. Bathsheba was accused of witchcraft in the 1800s after a series of misfortunes befell the town, including the unexplained deaths of several children.
Okay, so we've got a classic witch hunt scenario. A community gripped by fear and superstition looking for someone to blame. What happened to Bathsheba?
Well, the source says she was ostracized, driven from her home, and ultimately found dead under mysterious circumstances. But what's chilling is that before she died, Bathsheba supposedly cursed the land, vowing revenge on anyone who dared to live there.
So we're not just talking about a haunted house,
No.
but a house built on coasted land, haunted by a woman who was wronged, who died with rage and vengeance in his heart. That adds a whole new layer to this story, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It shifts the focus from the house itself to the person who inhabited it, to the events that unfolded within its walls. But Sheba becomes more than just a spooky figure. She becomes a tragic figure, a victim of circumstance whose pain and anger might have fueled the very haunting that now terrorizes those who dare to enter her domain.
And that makes me wonder, how much of this haunting is Bathsheba herself, and how much is the lingering echo of the injustice she suffered? Is it possible that the land itself absorbed the darkness of that witch hunt? That the accusations and the fear directed at her somehow warped the very fabric of the place?
That's a fascinating question, and it speaks to a broader concept in paranormal research, the idea that places can hold on to energy, that trauma and suffering can leave a kind of psychic residue. In this case, it's possible that Bathsheba's rage, amplified by the fear and hatred directed at her, became imprinted on the land, creating a vortex of negative energy that attracts and feeds on similar emotions.
So it's not just about one vengeful spirit.
Right.
It's about a chain reaction of negativity, a cycle of pain and fear that's been perpetuating itself for centuries. And that brings us back to the Cobbs. Could their own fears, their doubts be feeding into this cycle, adding fuel to the fire?
That's what the Warrens believed. They saw the Perron family's emotional vulnerability as a kind of doorway, an opening that allowed the entity to gain a foothold. The source describes Lorraine Warren sensing a deep well of fear within Carolyn, a fear that the entity was able to latch onto and exploit.
So we've got this cursed land, a vengeful spirit, and a family primed for haunting because of their own fears. It's like all the elements were in place for something truly terrifying to unfold. And unfold, it did right. The source talks about Carolyn becoming possessed. That's where things go from bad to truly horrifying.
Exactly, and it's a crucial turning point in the narrative. It's no longer just about spooky noises and objects moving. It's about a human being, a mother being taken over by a force she can't control. It's a violation on a deeply personal level, a terrifying glimpse into the power of the entity they're dealing with.
And how do the Warrens respond to this? They've seen their fair share of hauntings, but this seems like a whole new level of intense.
They recognize the gravity of the situation immediately. The source describes them realizing that this isn't just a case of a restless spirit. They're dealing with something ancient, something powerful, and something deeply malevolent.
So what do? How do you fight something that can possess a person, that can feed on fear that's been woven into the fabric of the land itself?
Well, according to the source, the Warrens believed that a full-blown exorcism was necessary.
Wow.
They saw Carolyn's possession as a sign that the entity was trying to gain complete control, not just of the house, but of the family itself.
An exorcism, that's some serious business. I'm guessing this wasn't your average Sunday service. What happened during the exorcism? Did it work?
The source describes a harrowing scene, a battle of wills between the Warrens and the entity possessing Carolyn. There's chanting religious artifacts and a palpable sense of struggle, as if the very air in the house is thick with unseen forces.
Okay, that's definitely getting into horror movie territory. But what about the outcome? Was the exorcism successful?
Well, that's where things get a little ambiguous. The source says the entity was weakened, driven back, but not completely eradicated. The Warrens believed that the house itself remained a conduit, a focal point for the negative energy that had been swirling there for centuries.
So even after this traumatic exorcism, the threat wasn't completely gone.
Right, it's like they pushed it back, but they didn't destroy it.
That's unsettling. What happened to the Perrons after this? Did they stay in the house?
They didn't. The source states that the family eventually left the house seeking a fresh start, a place where the echoes of Bathsheba's rage wouldn't follow them.
So they escaped the house, but did they escape the haunting? That's a good question, isn't it? And I guess that leads us to the final part of our deep dive, where we explore the lasting impact of this experience, not just on the Perrons, but on our understanding of evil, of hauntings, and of the unseen forces that might be shaping our world more than we realize. We've been talking about this house, this land steeped in darkness, right? And a family caught in the crosshairs of something truly malevolent. What sticks with me, what makes this story more than just a ghost tale, is the question of what happens after the haunting. The Perron family escaped the house, but did they escape the trauma?
That's a key point, and the source doesn't shy away from it. It states outright that the Perrons left seeking a fresh start, but the terror they experienced continued to haunt them. Think about it, even if you rationally understand that a house is the source of evil, not you, how do you shake off that feeling of violation?
Yeah, it's like a shadow that follows you, right? Even in a new home, a new town, wouldn't there be that lingering doubt? What if it followed us?
Exactly, and that speaks to the psychological power of these experiences. The source doesn't delve into the specifics of the Perron family's trauma, but we can extrapolate from other cases. Imagine the hypervigilance, the jump scares at every creak of the floorboards, the difficulty trusting your own senses. It's not just about escaping the ghost, it's about escaping the fear that becomes ingrained in your very being.
Yeah, makes you wonder if there's a kind of psychic scar tissue that forms after an experience like that. Like, even if you're logically convinced it's over, a part of you is forever changed.
That's a compelling analogy, and it raises a question that goes beyond the specifics of this case. How do our beliefs shape our experiences? We've been talking about the Perros' fear fueling the haunting, but what about their belief in the supernatural in the first place? Did that make them more susceptible?
Okay, that's getting into some deep territory. So are you saying that someone who doesn't believe in ghosts is less likely to be haunted?
Well, it's not that simple, but there's definitely a complex interplay between belief perception and experience. Think about placebo effects. Your belief in a treatment can have a tangible impact on your body, even if the treatment itself is inert. Could something similar be happening with hauntings?
So if you're already primed to believe in the supernatural, are you more likely to interpret ambiguous events as paranormal? Is it a self-fulfilling prophecy?
That's one theory, and it's worth considering, but it's also important to acknowledge that people experience genuine fear, genuine trauma during these events. Dismissing it all as imagination does a disservice to what they went through.
Right, of course. It's not about invalidating anyone's experience, but trying to understand the mechanisms at play. Is it possible that both things are true? That certain people might be more sensitive to these phenomena, and that their beliefs can influence their perception of them?
Absolutely. It's not an either-or situation. Human consciousness is a mystery we're only beginning to unravel. But cases like this one, with its whispers, its vengeful spirit, its escalating terror, they force us to ask, what if the line between the real world and the supernatural is blurrier than we think?
Okay, now that's a thought-provoking way to put it. So we've got this house that might be a conduit for darkness, a spirit fueled by rage and injustice, a family whose fears might have amplified the haunting, and a possibility that our own beliefs shape our reality. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is, and it's why these stories, even centuries later, continue to fascinate us. They tap into our deepest fears, our anxieties about the unknown, the possibility that there are forces at work that we can't control, can't fully understand.
And what I find so compelling about Whispers from the Hollow is that it doesn't offer easy answers. It doesn't tell you what to believe. It presents the events, the evidence, and leaves you to grapple with the implications.
Exactly. It's an invitation to explore the mysteries, to question our assumptions, to acknowledge the darkness that exists both within us and around us, and maybe, just maybe, to listen a little more closely to the whispers that come from the shadows.
Well said. This deep dive into Whispers from the Hollow has been quite a journey, a chilling exploration of a house that seems to hold on to darkness with an iron grip. But beyond the spooky details, this story raises some profound questions about the nature of evil, the power of belief, and the enduring impact of trauma.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most unsettling stories are the ones that stay with you long after you've closed the book, the ones that make you question what you thought you knew about the world, about yourself. And perhaps that's the most haunting thing of all.
And on that note, we'll conclude our deep dive. But before you go, take a moment to consider, are there places in your life that have given you that feeling of unease, that inexplicable chill. Perhaps there's more to those whispers than we realize. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep listening to the whispers from the hollow.